What's good, guys? Fantasy Joe back here with some more wide receiver rankings. We're talking week two, half point PPR league. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I bring you guys rankings every week. Buy lows, sell highs, waiver wire, all the content you need to know and dominate the rest of your league mates. So hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Sure helps out the video. And if you have any questions or comments, any start sit questions, leave them down in the comments below, and I'll hit you back with a response. So yeah, let's hop in these wide receiver rankings. So number one, I'm calling a big bounce back week this week. We've got number one, we've got Devonta Adams against Detroit. I went back and forth with him and Tyreek this week against Baltimore. They're both ballers, but I end up going with Devonta Adams. I think the Packers and Aaron Rodgers are going to come out trying to prove something after that embarrassing week one performance against the Saints. So yeah, I'm calling for the Adams bounce back. And as I said, we got at number two, we have Tyreek against Baltimore. Three, Deandre Hopkins coming off a monster game going against Minnesota, whose defense did not look very good in week one. Stephon Diggs, we have going against Miami. And then at five, I've got Keenan Allen going against Dallas. I think with the type of target volume he gets and the type of game that could be a shootout. I am going to call Keenan Allen top five start. I think he's going to have a big week this week, especially in PPR leagues. Number six, we've got Calvin Ridley against Tampa. Tough matchup, so I have him down a little bit, but I'm still high on Calvin Ridley in general. Think he can bounce back if Matt Ryan can get it going. At seven, we have Justin Jefferson against Arizona. I think this is going to be a shootout as well, or I think that the Cardinals are going to score on Minnesota's defense. I think Minnesota's going to need to come back. I think Justin Jefferson could have, 10-plus targets in this game and really could get it going for fantasy. And at eight, I've got DK Metcalf. This is another game that could be a shootout. Them in Tennessee. So, yeah, I've got Metcalf inside of my top 10. At nine, we've got Amari Cooper coming off the crazy volume we saw him get last week, going into Chargers team this week. That's why I have him inside the top 10. Another, like I said, I think that game could be a shootout as well. At 10, A.J. Brown against Seattle, same thing as the other matchup. Seattle doesn't have a great secondary this year, and I think he'll be able to get it going. I love the talent of A.J. Brown. He's a guy punches in a lot of touchdowns every year, does it himself. So, he had that touchdown last week. He's one of the most consistent wide receivers in football when it comes to touchdowns. At 11, we've got Cooper Kupp. He showed that mind-meld connection with Matthew Stafford in week one. He plays that slot role, which I like against basically every matchup. Fire him up with full confidence against the Colts this week. 12, Allen Robinson, another guy I think will have a bounce back. We saw him get 11 targets in week one. Only turned that into, 6 receptions for 35 yards. I think he gets that type of target load against Cincinnati, which we've seen him get, the last 2 years. He's been top 3 in the league in targets. I expect a bounce back from Allen Robinson. He's a guy you might be able to buy low as well. I might throw in a trade offer on him if I was in a league with someone like him. Because like I said, I think he'll bounce back this week. At 13, we have CeeDee Lamb going against the Chargers. I think him and Amari Cooper were hyper targeted in that last game. And if CeeDee turns a few of his drops into catches, he would have a monster week for fantasy. 14, we've got Tyler Lockett against Tennessee. Monster game last week, had that 2 touchdowns, insane catches. He can do it on just about any target total he wishes. Tyler Lockett's an absolute stud. At 15, we've got Adam Thielen against Arizona. With the injury to Irv Smith, I think those two players are going to get more targets. This is a great matchup against Arizona, so I'm firing both of them up. 16, we've got Chris Godwin against Atlanta. Excellent matchup for them. He's the receiver I'm taking at the top of my list right now between the 3 of them, although I view them all pretty closely, honestly, at this point. We'll talk about the rest of those Tampa Bay receivers as we keep going. 17, Terry McLaurin. So let me talk to all Terry McLaurin owners for a quick second here. Do not panic on Terry McLaurin. I still think he's going to be a solid receiver for fantasy. We saw him put up 1,100 yards last year with 2 high ankle sprains. And that was with really bad quarterback play. Even if Tyler Heineke is bad, which he probably won't be great, although he looked good in that playoff game last year, there's reason for optimism. especially this week if doesn't come out and look great. He's starting on a short week in his first start, the first time he's really getting reps with this team. So don't panic on Terry McLaurin. Hang on to him. I think he'll still be able to get you 1,200 yards over the course of the season probably. He's still the number one on that team, still should be hyper-targeted. Maybe not to the level that Ryan Fitzpatrick would have, but still I have confidence in Terry McLaurin going forward. It just knocks away his stealing to me. At 18, I've got Robert Woods. He has Matthew Stafford as well. I think that, he's the second option, but I still think he's going to be a strong player all season long. With that air attack, I think they're going to throw a lot more this year. At 19, we've got Deontay Johnson going against Vegas. I think that's a great matchup for him. And we saw him get double-digit targets again last week, being the target leader. I expect that to continue. Number 20, Debo Samuel against Philly. Good matchup. Who knows what's going on with Brandon Ayuk right now? I'd fire up Debo Samuel in this matchup with full confidence as a wide receiver 2 or a flex play. At 21, we've got Mike Williams going against Dallas. This is a little bit of a calling my shot. I think that Mike Williams is going to have a great game against Dallas. He had 13 targets last week. If he gets anywhere close to that target volume, especially if Austin Eckler is again limited with that hamstring, we didn't see him very involved in the passing game. I think those targets will go straight to Mike Williams. And, he could have a monster game against that Dallas secondary, especially if he can put one in the end zone. At 22, we have Jarvis Landry against Houston. Odell Beckham Jr. is out this week. He looks to be the number 1 on this team this week. He is the number 1 against a bad Houston team. He could have a great game for fantasy. He's another guy who gets a bump in PPR leagues as well. 23, of Antonio Brown. This might be a little bit bold, calling my shot here, though, putting him ahead of Mike Evans. I do think Mike Evans has more touchdown upside, but I think Antonio Brown is going to be more consistent. We'll see as the season goes on, though. There's a lot more data to gather than just week 1, but Antonio Brown looked fantastic at the end of last season, looked great this season, so I'm putting Antonio Brown as a top 24 play this week. At 24, At 24, I got a little ahead of myself. Jamar Chase against Chicago. Jamar Chase balled in his rookie debut. Chicago's secondary is not what it used to be. I'm firing Jamar Chase up with full confidence this week. Like I said, I think he just has a higher ceiling than a guy like Mike Evans. Mike Evans could catch 2 touchdowns, but I think Jamar Chase has a better chance at a 100-yard game, in my opinion. But I think, they're both fine starts. I'm starting both of them for sure in all formats. So don't hear what I'm not saying. But I think, Jamar Chase could have a very good game this week. Mike Evans could have a very good game as well if the touchdowns go his way. I just think there's a chance with these receivers that if they don't get it going early, there's a chance they're not throwing the ball a ton in the second half or fourth quarter and that they're running the rock out. So that would be my only downside to some of these Tampa Bay receivers. At 26, we've got Cortland Sutton against Jacksonville. With the injury to Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton looks to be the one on that team. He is an absolute stud as well. A player I'd be targeting in leagues, especially he didn't have a strong week 1 performance, but I expect him to get it going moving forward. He is a really good receiver. Don't doubt it. The guy is a stud as a player, and now he's going to have opportunity. These are the guys you can buy before they break. If you're going to have to pay up for him still, if the owner knows that Jerry Jeudy went down, but you might have to pay what he's going to be is what I'm saying. So I would look into it. Okay, 27, we got Julio Jones facing up against the Seattle Seahawks. I think he'll get it going in this game. Like I said, I think that game has a chance for it to be a shootout. And as long as Chandler Jones doesn't come up the edge getting 5 sacks, I think that Tennessee Titans offense will be far more productive in week 2 to bounce back from them. At 28, we got DJ Moore. This might be a surprise to some of you, and I'm not bodying DJ Moore, but I do just want to see some more samples of this offense. Christian McCaffrey has just taken such a huge target volume load, which we knew he would, but then with the addition of Terrace Marshall as well, the targets are really getting spread out amongst those 4, and it creates a situation where it's difficult to know which ones to play in fantasy. DJ Moore would definitely be the receiver I would be playing from that group for sure. I think he had 8 targets last week. Let me fact check that real quick though, just so I'm not giving you guys any bad information. DJ Moore targets. Yeah, 8 targets for 6 for 80 last week. I think he could do similar to that against New Orleans. I just want to see more games out of this offense first, really. 29, I have Devonta Smith against San Francisco. He looked great last week. Looks to be the clear number one in that team. Jalen Hurts looked good throwing the ball. I'd be firing up Devonta Smith with full confidence this week after we saw him get that type of target volume. 30, Chase Claypool. Deontay Johnson led the team in targets. I think Chase Claypool has a touchdown upside on this team. That's why he's at 30 in a good matchup against Vegas. I like Chase Claypool a lot this week, especially from his week 1 performance. I think he will do better. 31, we've got Brandon Cooks facing off against Cleveland. He is the number one on that team as well. Tyrod looked very good in week 1, even though it was against that Jacksonville Jaguars team. He looks, I think, close to that this week against Cleveland. He's going to have probably Denzel Ward or a good corner on him. It'll be a much different matchup, but still, the target should be there. So I'd fire up Brandon Cooks. Juju Smith-Schuster, I have at 32. Same thing with Chase Claypool. It's a good matchup. He got targets last year. He's facing off against Vegas as well. So I think he's got a good matchup. And he had targets last week. They're in that slot role, so they're not very far down the field, but targets are targets. 33, T. Higgins against Chicago. Like I said, that Chicago secondary is not what it used to be. I think Higgins and Jamar Chase are the wide receivers I'd like to own. Obviously, Tyler Boyd's still very serviceable, but I would have a slight preference to those two. At 34, I've got Jacoby Myers facing off against that terrible New York Jets team. I think that Myers is going to get the targets this week. He led the team in targets last week, I believe. He gets that type of target load against the Jets. I think he'll do a bit more with it than he did last week, and again has that chance of punching in a touchdown. Corey Davis, monster week last week, tougher matchup this week against the Patriots, but I still expect him to be the target hog on that team, so I'm firing him up for sure. Number 36, we got Marquis Brown. He looked really good last week against Vegas. Part of that could be matchup, but he goes against this Kansas City team that they could be trailing. You could potentially get even more targets, so I'm firing up Marquis Brown this week. At 37, we got Robbie Anderson against New Orleans. Very few targets for him last week. Turned that one reception for a 50-plus yard bomb into a touchdown, so he saved his week, but I would keep my eyes on Robbie Anderson if I'm one of his owners, to be honest with you. 38, Sterling Shepard against the Washington football team. We saw him lead the team in targets last week. So I think there's a good chance that he does it again this week with Kenny Golladay being integrated in the system on a short week especially, and they could be trailing against a good defense. That's why he's down here at 38, but I still think he has some upside for this week. 39, we got Marvin Jones facing up against Denver. Solid defense, and just a lot of good receivers. So I have him at 39. I might play him over Sterling Shepard or Robbie Anderson now that I'm starting to think of it, though. Just because I think he has more upside than probably both of those receivers, even though they both have tough matchups. So I think if I need more, I'm playing Marvin Jones for the upside. But last receiver, Will Fuller, I think there's a chance he comes out and has a real good game against Buffalo. I think they're counting on him to be good. So he'd be a receiver I'd have my eyes on this week. He might be on your waiver wires. So look to snag him if he is out there. I do think he'll be involved. If you guys have made it to this point in the video, please hit that like button. If you have any start sits, leave them down in the comment section down below. I'll let you guys know. If you guys have any other questions or comments, you can leave them down there. Trade stuff, all that stuff, I'll respond. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. I really appreciate it. And this has been Fantasy Joe. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys next time.